Hey guys, I'm Elle, and today I'm going to talk about representation, own voices, and I'm going to recommend you some books. Lately, I've been very introspective and I've been thinking a lot about diversity and the importance of telling stories, and I read a book that completely changed my way of thinking. I'm going to talk about that book later. Since I'm always trying to understand the world better and to learn and to grow, I came across this concept of own voices. This hashtag and movement were created to generate buzz about diverse authors who are writing books about their own experiences. I've always been very openly supportive of the We Need Diverse Books campaign, but I believe this is taking it one step further. It's not enough to have representative characters if we don't think about who is writing them. Even if the portrayal of the characters by a majority group author is very respectfully done, there's an additional value in reading those stories from authors who actually live those experiences. It's also known that authors from a minority group have a much rougher path than authors from a majority group, and they do have to speak louder to be heard. This is a question of privilege. I think we have to support authors who are writing about their own experiences to create a space to let people tell their own stories. AC Thomas on Twitter did an amazing thread that I'm going to leave in the description about the connection of own voices and Black Lives Matter. They said that people will never fully understand the experiences of living as a black person unless they are a black person, as you will never understand what living in Argentina is, and you will never understand what being Latina is unless you live here. I'm not going to get too much into it, but lately I've been thinking a lot about my Argentine-ness and about my Latin-ness. And I've been talking a lot with my friends and my family about how they feel with their own identities, and I realized that everyone has their own experiences, even in this same household. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, they all think about their identities in different ways. Me, in comparison to you guys who are my friends who I always listen to, but you are people from another countries, you are people from the US, from Europe, from Australia, and I think about my identity in comparison to you. But my sister, for example, thinks in comparison to her own peers, to her colleagues, and to people in Latin America. So we think about our identities in completely different ways. So when I was talking to her, something clicked, and I decided to make this video to at least recommend you some books about people who are telling their own stories. The first book that I want to recommend you is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This book I believe is very popular, but I want to recommend you in case you haven't read it. It has a Latino main character, and it talks a lot about intersectionality, and it has a gay character who wants to forget that he is gay. And it's so different from the next book that I want to recommend, which is Not Otherwise Specified by Hannah Moskowitz. This has a bisexual character, and I realized reading a lot of books with bisexual characters that not a lot of people who aren't bisexual understand what bisexuality is. So Hannah Moskowitz is bisexual, so she did an amazing portrayal of a girl who's trying to understand herself and who has a lot of questions but at the same time has a lot of certainties. I really recommend this book if you want to read something that is very introspective but at the same time is very fun to read and very fast paced. Then if you want to read something more fantasy, I recommend The Girl From Everywhere. This has a mixed race heroine that is half Hawaiian, and she also travels in time with her bipolar dad, so I think it has a lot of representation of a lot of different things, and it's also very fun to read. It has a lot of ships and maps and people trying to change the past and traveling through time a lot. Then a book that is so powerful and heartbreaking is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is such an important book. It's about a little girl who's growing up in the 60s and 70s, and she's trying to understand the civil rights movement at the same time that she's trying to understand her own identity as a black girl. You can tell that Jacqueline Woodson is so respectful of her own story. And the last book I want to talk about, and it's the book that changed my way of thinking the other day, is Juliet Takes a Breath. This is about a girl who is Latina and lives in the Bronx, and she wants to live, so she writes a letter to a very famous author who writes very feminist books to be an intern for her. So she goes to Portland to understand her own womanhood, her own femininity, her own ideas of feminism as a minority, as a lesbian, as Latina, as a woman. It talks about so many different things, but at the same time it has a coherent plot. She also thinks a lot about her spirituality and about her religion and the connection between her womanhood and the religion and how she's going to connect her identity with her feminism. And adored this book. It made me think about my experiences as a woman, my experiences with feminism, and my experiences as a Latina. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say today. If you have any recommendations of books, or if you want to talk about this, let me know in the comments and we'll talk about this. And I will leave all the articles in the descriptions if you want to know more and investigate. And yeah, that was everything. Hope you like this. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you in the video. Bye!